RJ.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're excited to have you on the podcast. I'm Dan.
I'm Shane.
And this is Scroll Sessions.
Fantastic.
Well, RJ, can you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure.
And who you are.
Here I am, RJ Schultz. I am a business transplant. Like, I did not grow up thinking I would be here today. Did not grow up with aspirations to like start companies or even work at a company, right? I spent the first few years of my professional life in the government, like the military. Went to school, studied aeronautical science, concurrently got a pilot's license, and then joined an intelligence program affiliated with the Army right out of school. And so that sent me into 3 years of training.
Okay.
So here I am, like 26, 27, 28 or whatever, never having really worked in the real world yet. But I went operational after that training and had fun, man. I had a lot of fun. Got to see some of the world that I probably wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah.
Got to see some places I have seen again, but like through different glasses, which has been pretty cool. But I realized very quickly that I did not want a life in the government. In fact, I decided to transition to business through business school, and the impetus was I was home. I was gone a lot with the government. When I came home once, I had a 3-year-old son. He's like 2.5, 3 at this time. And we were playing with these trucks. He's like obsessed with cars and trucks at this time. And he's just like, Dad, this is fun. I'm like, yeah, buddy, I think so too. And he's like, next time, I want to do it at your house. I'm like, oh man, like my son doesn't even think I live here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're traveling so much.
Yeah, and so that year, I quit and I went inactive, still affiliated, but I went to business school. And at that point, like I'm up all night Googling like what is next, if not government, like what's out there for me. I had no idea. I Googled, best ways to further your education, like what are my options? And I settled on an MBA program and I went and took the test. I'm like, what do you got to take this test? What is this thing? It's a monster. And so I went in and took it cold. I was like putting my application together and I'm starting to realize people like identify the desire to go to business school like in high school sometimes, and they select their college based on that. Yeah. And they're like taking GMAT prep courses on the side and paying thousands of dollars for tutoring and like help on all this, and this is like their goal. And I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, I am behind. Yeah. And when I got to business school, like I applied to one school. Luckily, I really, really enjoyed it because when I got there, I realized, oh my gosh, this is like a world where people are like plugging into options and all this, and I get there and I am a fish out of water, dude. Like
going from the government, from the military to that.
Nothing I can talk about or I've done is applicable to any of these conversations with you people. Like one guy's, he's the son of the CEO of a global hotel chain that you've stayed at, and his dad's like, go back to school and get an MBA and prove yourself, and so you can take over the family business. Everyone else is like, yeah, I just sold a business for a cool little million, but I want to learn how to do it, on bigger scale. And, one guy was an early investor in Pixar and cashed out, and he just was going to school because his wife's parents are from that town. He didn't even recruit for a job afterward. You know what I mean? Like all these folks. Mix. And here I am just like, I don't even know how to spell entrepreneurship, literally. Don't know if the E or the U comes first. You know what I mean?
Still don't know how to spell it.
Don't ask me.
Good thing for spell check.
That's what Grammarly's for.
Yeah,
just saying.
True.
I went to Duke University.
Oh wow.
Went to Duke.
Okay.
And it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun. I took this class. So I through the government, I'd applied to this McKinsey and Company thing, this McKinsey Emerging Scholars thing, and I became a semifinalist. I thought, oh, this is what I want to do for sure. And then I got to school and started meeting these people, and I'm like, that is not what I want to do. Like, I don't want to work for anybody, let alone like. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to disparage that publicly, but because it's a fantastic route. But I started taking classes that really changed, like helped me find that thing that I was like, okay, I need to put my claws into something. Yeah. And
what were the classes that you took that shift your mindset on that?
Yeah, good question. There were a few. One was consumer behavior in nature. I'm not sure exactly what it was called, but on day one, we had the CEO of either Starkist or Bumblebee Tuna come in, and he's like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm the CEO, whichever one of those, I can't remember, but we're chasing down the other one. So if it was Bumblebees, like we're chasing down Starkist, they're crushing us in this part of the world for these reasons, and I just want to know why, right? Like we've put these, what I think are very innovative things into place, and they're just not taking. I'll be back in 12 weeks or whatever the semester length was, and I'll hear your pitches, and I'll give $5,000 to the idea we implement, right? So right there, it's like we don't even have class. We had access to some of the StarKist or Bumblebee team, and we were talking with them and like getting to work on their problems. And that was the first time that I was ever like, this is fun. Like strategy and execution and like making changes you could go to a grocery store and see implemented the next week type thing. I'm like, this stuff is really, really fun.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, it was a blast. There's another class, I think it was called like entrepreneurial execution. I should remember that because I stay in touch with the professor, but he is someone who I am like patterning my life after, because he went and he got an MBA and then a PhD, but then jumped into entrepreneurship, and he stayed in the research triangle. So in North Carolina, you have Duke and UNC, you have NC State, and you have Wake Forest, and lots of research comes out of those institutions, right? And a lot of the research is ripe for commercialization. And so you'll see a handful of professors, adjunct and otherwise, that stay there and just kind of like shoot fish in a barrel with student-led research of like, let's commercialize that. And so he had done it 3 times, and he's on his 4th. And the previous 3, they had exited for a total of 1.5 billion. And so this, like, these things are happening, right? They're not just like apps in people's basements. And so he like opened my eyes, man, just opened my eyes to how simple, and let me qualify that, simple entrepreneurship is. Entrepreneurship is very complex and very difficult, but we make it increasingly so, right? Like it is as simple as build something for someone in particular, right? Like that's as simple as it needs to be. And so he really drove that home. That class was monumental for my mind shift.
That's cool.
Like my mindset shift. And then there is another one, you know, with all that research going on, like Duke in particular has a huge law school and a huge medical school, big PhD programs in the biomedical and engineering spaces. And so a lot of research is coming out of there. And the schools will get together once a year and hold this Shark Tank like event. Okay. Instead of pitching your idea for investment, and this one in particular, you're pitching your idea, trying to get like a business component to your team, right? Like I've been, you know, heads down for 5 years researching, and I'm ready to start thinking about commercialization. And so I went to one of those, joined up with a team, and that became like a semester or 2 of my classes. Like the university was giving credits for that. I didn't have to go to class, but like literally building a business with these professors who were independently wealthy themselves from their enterprise, and now they're here, you know, volunteering their time to help us do the same. And so that type of experiential learning was just like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Wow, yeah, what a cool program.
It was awesome.
To me, I feel like I actually didn't finish school, so and I owe it, not always, but a lot of times I'll talk so much crap on undergrad. But then I hear about certain programs that just blow my mind. The fact that Duke has such a cool program where you're able to be immersed in actual business and work with companies, like that's what school should be. So that's just such an awesome, such an awesome experience. And to backtrack on that, you applied to one school, which was Duke, and you got in.
Yeah, because...
And you took a test to get in blind? Like, what test was this?
The GMAT, like just the regular... Like I mean, everyone takes it.
MBA.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was lucky because like a business school, and I served on the admissions committee in my second year just to kind of give back, and I learned a lot. I'm like, dude, I was lucky because a business school has to think about, okay, well, like there are rankings, right? A business school has to think like, I'm going to bring in 400 or 800 people, and I need to make them happy on the back end, or else our name is dragged through the mud, right? So if they bring, if they bring in a class full of people from Wall Street who want to go right back to Wall Street, like 90% of those people are not getting their dream jobs, and they're going to be disgruntled, right? So they have to piece together a class that allows them to deliver on this transformative experience, right? And so I was like literally the only guy coming from the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to be like the best at the test and you know and stuff like that. I think I was unique enough. They're like, oh, this guy can come in. Oh, and he wants to do entrepreneurial things, so we don't have to worry about him. Like we'll focus on everyone else. So I just kind of slid in by luck.
Awesome. No, amazing though. You got into Duke off of a blind GMAT test. That just amazing. Goes to show, I think, who you are and what your education is.
I appreciate the kind words, man.
You brought up execution and simplifying entrepreneurship. I think like following you on LinkedIn and seeing a lot about what you talk about, a lot of it has to do with like execution and executing, you know, even if you don't exactly have a plan, right? Talk to us a little bit about that. It seems like that's kind of maybe become your mission lately, and it kind of maybe came from probably military, but
yeah, I think execution is extremely important in business, and it's like the least sexy part of it, right? Strategy is where everyone wants to be. I want to be an analyst. I want to be a strategy guy. Yeah. It's like, cool, how much money is that paper strategy bringing into your company? Like, it's nothing until it's executed upon. Yeah. And so I think the most important thing that we've done, you know, I've worked at 3 companies, Amazon, Lucid, and now Blip, since business school, and each of those places had a really particular focus on execution that taught me how important it was, right? Like it all comes down to how you execute. You know, I was even last night, as I was doing a little bit of like strategy and planning personally, right? Like I love LinkedIn, and I see so much gold on there, like so much. And I'm like, man, that person just said it the right way. And I'm like, I got to save that because I need to reference it later. I wish LinkedIn, if you're listening, I wish there was some type of organizational component to the saving piece.
Because it only goes to just one little spot. Yeah. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, I get you on that.
So I have a spreadsheet, and it gives me a second pass. I'm like, why did I save this? And I'll delete it or something. But if the second pass, I'm still like, man, that's amazing, I'll put it into the spreadsheet, you know, based on topic. And as I'm building this, I do refer to it quite often when we need. But I'm thinking, how worthless are, you know, these 30 or 40 posts I have saved here until I'd be better served to just pick one of these, highlight it yellow, and refer to it every day until I implement what it's teaching me, right? Yeah. And it all comes back to activity versus accomplishment. We get so lost, you know, this false sense of accomplishment when we're just doing activities, when we're just like spinning the wheels. Busy, yeah. I advise companies on the side, and was talking to someone who's like, yeah, dude, my bread and butter is I work hard. I'm like the last person to leave the office. I'm always working. I'm like, well, what have you accomplished? Like, what are your top 3 like needle movers? Right. She's like, well, I mean, I and it was just like, I work hard. I'm like, well, man, I think I'd rather have someone that works less hard, but does things that are meaningful to the company, which ties back to the root of your executionary path. Your executional path has to start with like vision and the way you communicate it and the way you hold people accountable and yourself and things like that. Totally. But yeah, execution is an art that, because it's not sexy, it's just not a focus. Yeah. And I'm sure all conversations will lead into this since we're in the tech space, but the way that tech is conditioned, like the rock stars, so to speak, to emerge, where companies can exist based on the ability to grow top line only. And like that doesn't highlight the need for really fine-tuned execution, right? Like forever. It's just like, sure, I can grow and grow and grow. It costs me a ton of money. I'm not profitable. Yeah. People like me, you know what I mean?
Cool. Like, and you'll do that for 10, 15 years, and then it'll just die off. It'll just go away. You know?
I'll cash out before then. It'll be someone else's problem.
It'll be somebody else's problem. No
I think we're seeing a shift where, you know, business owners, we are forced to start treating our business finances like we do our personal finances. You know what I mean? Where it's unit economics should rule, and execution is the crux of whether or not you can play the unit economics game, right?
Yeah. One thing that I've noticed in our agency is it's hard to reward execution on the fulfillment side, where it's easy to reward it on the sales side. But as far as compensation goes, it's really easy to say, hey, if you sell something, you make X percentage of commission. That's how sales has always gone. Yep. But on the fulfillment side, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you reward execution from like a comp plan? Where fulfillment gets a new task and they have to do it, and you want to be able to reward them for hitting a certain level of execution.
So let me define fulfillment real quick to make sure I understand correctly. Is that just the execution of the service you're providing?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that, you know, and this gives some insight into my style of leadership here. It's like, I don't need to be the guy to answer that at Blip. I need to have leaders at our company that can do that in a tailored manner for their department. And we do that together. And so I will answer that question because I do have some great thoughts on that. Great in terms of size, maybe not quality. We've thought a lot about this, but like where you can't quantify dollars in tomorrow from what you're doing today, what can you use to measure whether or not you are implementing or executing effectively? And so I think that you need to find some of those maybe more qualitative dipstick measure marks. You can do this in conjunction with customers, like level of happiness, level of ideation. I think that anything that we're doing in delivering, in terms of delivering our service, need to start with a baseline of like where we're at. That forces our executioners to really be intentional about what they're doing. Because if they can't say, I'm trying to do this for this purpose, then it's not going to be optimal. It's not going to be optimally done. And it's not going to make a difference if no one recognizes the change that has been made from it, right? So even if you're not bringing in dollars, it's like if we're setting out with a campaign to try and affect, you know, your organic traffic or your this or your that, like let's start with a baseline measurement so that we can track how well our execution has moved the needle.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like that because salespeople always get rewarded for the sale of what will be executed, but the execution is all the work, and a lot of times fulfillment doesn't necessarily get rewarded for that. So we've been playing with that idea, like how do we reward our fulfillment team for extremely quality execution, and what is that like quantitative data?
We have it is hard. We have a team. Internal team at Blip that we call a data and automation team, right? And 4 individuals who are just, I'm not even gonna tell you their names because anyone listening might try and steal them. They are fantastic. We've got HubSpot experts on that team, people who are neck deep in the GPT-4 movement and the stuff that can do, right? And so what they're doing is going around to every unit, every business unit in the company and just saying, can I sit next to you for a week? What do you do? Like, what are your daily tasks and how are you executing against those? And they're making observations and then putting plans together with those stakeholders to like automate their job. And so we will have regular touch points where we talk about, okay, what do we learn about what the customer success team or the marketing or the sales team are doing in their day-to-day and how much time are they spending? And so with the automations, we can track how much more efficient those teams are becoming, hours spent or whatever. And that helps us start to quantify the effect of execution as it moves further and further away from like revenue one. And that, I mean, that's my favorite initiative, favorite meeting that we have. Yeah. Just to watch that hours saved column grow.
We're doing amazing. I mean, I've done the same thing at our company. We've been going around and literally, with our writers, especially with our copywriters and people that are writing SEO content, people that are writing blogs, like we've taken one of our writers and basically 10x'd the amount of output that she can do. So
with automation tools,
and just AI. Pretty much completely eliminated all of our writing contractors. You know, so it's pretty amazing. We've done the same thing with our Facebook and Google teams. I've built tools that will allow them to be able to execute in a faster pace. It's super fun right now. Like AI is going to quite literally change the landscape. I mean, it already has, and it's just moving at an incredible speed. I mean, it used to take like a year or two, for people to roll out products, and you see Microsoft acquire this and literally inject it immediately into all of their products in a matter of weeks.
I wonder if Microsoft asked ChatGPT, how could we incorporate this? But yesterday we have 2 people that are out because one got married and one just had a baby, and they're both ad buyers. So I had to kind of step in over the last few days and take on all these.
Be tactical.
Yeah. And I literally yesterday was building a brand new Google campaign for a customer that had never ran one before. And the customer does like noise surveys. I didn't know anything about I knew nothing about the industry. They work on construction sites a lot. And I didn't have a ton of time to dive in on this, but I literally put the website into ChatGPT and said, act like a Google Ads expert, help me dissect this, come up with keyword suggestions. It helped me just
Wow.
It formatted everything for me. So it's like, hey, here's some keyword ideas. I'm not going to just use them word for word, but man, it saved me an hour and a half of research by just formatting the research for me.
Wow.
So
Wow.
crazy what it's able to do in our industry. And Dan's been building out a lot of products that when somebody submits an onboarding form, all those prompts are already done. So our team gets a filled out form that's like, hey, we did a ton of research. It's dissected. Here you go. Go build the campaign.
That's
really
cool
cool to see.
It's super fun.
That's
like
awesome.
within about 30 seconds after our client fills out the onboarding form.
Please not the
yeah,
onboarding.
not the offboarding form. None of that's being automated. The onboarding form, within about 30 seconds, our entire team gets a document, that 4-page document that is all dissected information based on what they filled out, and gives them everything they need to go execute.
So this is like requirements for the campaign.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
pretty much.
Wow.
And here's keyword
So
suggestions. Here's headline suggestions. Here's description suggestions.
That is cool.
Here's an audience breakdown based on their target audience. Here's like all this stuff, So
it's really cool. It's not perfect.
No,
You know.
but it's a really good start, and that's, at least for now, how you should use AI. Yeah, hopefully people are using it to enhance, and especially like what it's doing is taking average people and making them like excellent for the most part.
Yeah, me. See, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm very average, and it's like, wow, you know a lot about noise surveys.
Yeah. Well, the problem is you want and need and should become excellent, and use AI to do that. But
Absolutely.
But so as far as Blip goes, you started at Amazon after school. What did you do for Amazon?
So I was in their emerging markets department, and essentially this was 2016. So what we were doing was we're taking the marketplace as you know it to other countries, right? And that became a game of like, we want to set up fulfillment centers and contract agreements with suppliers and stuff in these countries. No, we do not. We just want to make extend the internal eBay part of it, right? So we go to like the UK or Mexico or Canada, and or rather we'd go to the sellers in the US who are doing really well and just say like, hey, can we cross list your stuff in the US and Canada and the UK and Canada? And so we're just extending the marketplace to other countries, and it was fun. That was another like, there's
travel job.
Yeah, it was a good little travel job, but it was another like first for me, really getting a taste of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. So we're meeting with all these manufacturers, and I realized that these manufacturers have engineers on their team who are just building stuff, like coming up with ideas, ideating, and just creating things. And they're all, ready for white label. No one's touching them.
Yeah.
Half the world doesn't even know they exist. And I'm just thinking like, what is that? Oh yeah, just made this. Who's buying it? Nobody. Can I? So we and Amazon encouraged us to do this because it made us better at our jobs. We all had e-commerce stores running on the side, and I was like, man, I put my first product. This is probably gonna get in trouble for this, but I put my first product on the store. I didn't know what I was doing, and I check my account like a month later. I'm like, 10 grand in profit. I haven't even touched this thing.
Yeah.
So this thing's like bringing in 10 grand a month.
Yeah.
And that was the power of Amazon back in those days. That has since changed.
I ran an Amazon store.
Amazon,
That's what led to this. I sold it, and it helped me be able to build this. But yeah,
fantastic.
I did the same thing.
So you know the fun, the highs
stuff.
and the lows. Like
Yeah.
I still do Amazon on the side. I've got teams that run it, so I don't do it. But when I get into it, I'm like, I don't even recognize what's going on here anymore. It is so complex.
Yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't do it by myself.
So did you work with sellers, or did you work with as Amazon? You worked with independent seller accounts, right? And tried to get them listed.
Yeah, we work with both suppliers and sellers. We tried to create sellers. I mentioned we tried to convert sellers to other countries.
Yeah.
We looked at a country and we're just trying to improve price and selection, for consumers there.
So you are an entrepreneur on the side still then, because you're running this Amazon business.
Yeah,
same one that you started in 2016.
Yeah, same one. Yeah.
And do you have VAs run it for you now?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Epic. That was like my goal back in the day. Yeah, that's really cool.
So you went from Amazon to Lucid.
Yep.
And you talked earlier about kind of execution and how each of these companies, like, I guess the culture of execution was a little bit different. How going from Amazon to Lucid here, were you back in Utah at this point?
I came to Utah for Lucid. Yeah.
Where were you with Amazon?
Seattle. Yeah.
Did Amazon, by the way, have a good culture of, for example, everything I would assume of Amazon is that they care 100% about consumer.
Yeah.
Right. So like as a seller on Amazon, I always felt like, oh, Amazon does not give a crap about me. They just, they'll shut me down if they want, you know, but what was the culture at Amazon when it came to sellers and consumers? Did they want you to focus on the consumer more or the seller?
Yeah, I can only speak to the culture of like my department, right? Because Amazon is an ecosystem. But business. My hiring, my getting hired there coincided with, I think it might have been the same summer or right after. If you remember though, was it New York Times or Wall Street Journal article that talked about how people are crying at their desks and things?
Yeah.
And so I brought that up in every interview. I'm like, explain this. You know, like, what do you have to say? And I thought my interviewers handled it really well. One piece of information that we didn't get, I think that the article took some journalistic liberties, like most of all of them do.
Most media these days,
Yeah, one of my interviewers is like, look, that person, the source for that article, the main source was on my team. She had been gone for a year by the time the article was written. She left on her own accord. And in that year, I had been invited to her wedding and I attended. We're still friends to this day. When I read that, I'm like, I don't remember, you know what I mean? But that's not to say that like harsh conditions didn't exist. Amazon is a very customer-centric company. Like customer obsession is like chief among their principles for leadership, right? In my experience though, my managers were fantastic. My team was great. I had all the time off that I wanted as long as things were getting done, right? They really valued work-life balance. I loved it. In fact, when I went to Lucid, I'm like, dang, I made the wrong choice. I miss Amazon. I loved Lucid, though. Lucid is fantastic. But I loved Amazon. I really did.
And Lucid seemed like it has I had some friends that worked there. It's a pretty amazing work culture for the most part. And they have their hackathon and they've got some other really interesting work culture things. Talk a little bit more about Lucid, or for people who don't know what Lucid is.
I'll start by talking about Amazon, because at Amazon there were a lot of fantastic people, but it's hard to really hone in on where support plus luck stops and like raw talent and just perseverance starts, because even though we each operated as like independent little entrepreneurial units, like we're part of Amazon, you know what I mean? Like you had funding, anything you wanted to do had money behind it. So I get to Lucid and it's small at that time and there was none of that backing them. And so I got to see like the silhouette of how fantastic these people were. And the early leaders of that company are among the best I've ever worked with in my career. They are fantastic people, fantastic entrepreneurs, like so good. I mean, look what they've done with a flow chart. You know what I mean?
With the simple, simple idea of what they started with into what it is today is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, so I felt like the big aha, like, wow, this is fun, talent, blah, 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 at Amazon that I experienced or was first exposed to, because that is not what you find in the government. I felt like that big aha was just diluted to its truest, most foundational component in everyone I met at Lucid. And I was just like, this place is awesome.
Yeah, because you went from a very customer-centric company, right? Amazon was, we want to focus on the consumer, and the consumers really build the product. It's like the consumers ask for something, Amazon goes and tries to build it, where at Lucid was a shift of, we're just a product-focused company. We want to build this really amazing flow chart. Like, where was it at when you were there compared to where it is now?
It was starting to turn that corner because of all the traction that just building that flow chart product had brought. Yeah. All the organic growth, caused everyone's eyeballs to be turned toward who was finding this on their own and like, what can we do to start building for them? And so in the first couple of years of my tenure there,
what did you do? What did you do for them, by the way?
Business development, strategy and operations in the partner ecosystem, a couple of things. And then the last year I started the government vertical, which is now thriving with, not because of me, just because of the opportunity there, but they've got a really good leader in place of that unit, and it's just crushing. Like he's taken them into FedRAMP certification, which allows them to serve the federal government. I mean, like it's rocking because of who's leading it.
Federal government has a nice budget.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, and so with Lucid, so you came in, you were helping develop the product with like your team and trying to go after new verticals, or what exactly were you doing?
Good question. Yeah. So my first team, this business development focus we had was really taking the product as it had already been built, and finding better ways to distribute it through partners. So for example, we recognized we have a ton of users who are also G Suite users or are also 365 users, right? So let's go knock on Google and Microsoft store and say, we're serving the same person. And in the case of Microsoft, they're choosing us over your crappy Visio, right?
Yeah.
So let's work together.
Or building something in PowerPoint.
Yeah, it would be a huge win if we could take this product, and even if we needed to, lop off the top 10th and rebuild that, last 10% for your customers' purposes or your ecosystem purposes, let's do that. Let's build an integration and then just have you push it down. And so you'll notice in Excel, for example, you can have a Lucid chart button add in in your ribbon, bam, natively.
Oh, that's cool.
Through integration. So stuff like that, or we partnered with Salesforce, Google, and those guys. So it was a partnership play for distribution.
So you kind of had an intrapreneur route then, right? Where you worked for Amazon, but you had a very entrepreneurial role at Amazon, and then same with Lucid, you had an entrepreneurial role. It seems like you've done a lot of intrapreneurship. Can you talk about why you feel like intrapreneurship has maybe some more benefits than entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I have to open up my heart to pour out the answer because, with the e-commerce thing on the side, and I have a brand I'm about to launch, so I'm very excited about. A very niche brand, happy to talk about. But as I'm doing those things and then simultaneously doing the intra type stuff, you notice the stark contrast between doing something for someone who has a ton of money and it's funded and there's support and there's help. And over here, it's just dude, I don't know if this is going to be a thing tomorrow. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I really have felt the difference between, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, but the difference between the level of ease with which you can find progress when you have support and you don't have support, when you have funding, you don't have funding, when this is somebody else's half-baked idea where 10 other people smarter than you are helping you bring it to life, and this is something that's happening in your closet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't have the full picture of the straight up entrepreneurial route, because if the interest stuff wasn't there and I was focused on this brand full time, I would have a semblance of that team helping me out, right? We would have more eyes and more power behind it. But for now, in the limited capacity, that's been the stark contrast, been the difference.
Yeah.
Tell us about the brand. Yeah. I'm curious to know.
Yeah. So we're launching a crowdfunding campaign. Can't say Kickstarter or Indiegogo or anything because they won't allow the product on the platform because it's related to firearms.
Okay.
But it comes from a problem that I experienced time and time again with the weapon of choice in the U.S. government. So we use the M4 or the AR-15 style weapon, right? It has a star chamber in it to extract and load each bullet.
Okay.
And that star chamber gets gunked up with the residue from the explosion that sends the bullet out the barrel, right? And so a few hundred rounds in, you're jamming. And there's even a button, it's called a forward assist. There's a jam rod button thing that'll try and just shove the bullet in there in case it's gunked up. And it's just you're building this into your product because it sucks. You know what I mean? Star chamber is just so finicky, it needs to be clean, right? And so we would spend hours after using the weapons to make sure they're maintained and cleaned. And when you're in the field, that's really hard.
Yeah.
And even when you're not in the field, it's very, very time consuming. If you're in a regular line unit in the Army and you have range day, for example, where everyone's going out to qualify with their rifles, your training officer will schedule 4-hour block after that for everyone to clean their weapons. Jeez. And so we built this machine. It's about a foot long, maybe 6 inches high. And worthy to note that the AR-15 or the M4, they are two pieces joined together, right? There's a lower and an upper. And so the machine is designed to replicate the shape, the reception. Excuse me, this liquid death is crushing me.
Yeah, sorry.
It's so good. Replicate the reception of the lower. So you take your weapon apart you put the upper on top of the machine. The upper is what has the star chamber and the dirty place. And then we've just really borrowed technology from like a dental water pick.
Oh, interesting. To shoot and clean it out.
Yeah, transducer powered jewelry cleaner and like a regular old yard sprinkler. And so this boom will insert into the star chamber and just rotate with pressure that you can control and just clean it in 30 seconds. And so we built a prototype. I called my buddies in the Army and I'm like, when are you at the range next? So we showed up at the armory when they had that 4-hour block to clean their weapons. And I'm just like, line them up, put it on the table, 30 seconds. And everyone's just like, sign me up.
Yeah, this is awesome.
It's a good and a bad. A lot of demand because it solves a problem that everyone. I mean, when we did our little bit of customer research, it's like what is the worst part about owning an A? And they're just like cleaning that thing, man, star chamber, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's good, but the bad part is those people don't have any money. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the Army does not make you rich.
Yeah.
So, and since it's gun related, like it can't.
It's really be advertised.
It's a lot harder to market them for sure. But that's a super cool product, and obviously you're solving a big need and big problem. That's the first place to look when you're creating products.
Yeah,
and the military, like this is an issue that happens even in the military that you could go and pitch to the government and get a lot
exactly
through them. So that's
so we're hopeful that if we can crowdfund enough to like manufacture this thing. Like right now, the biggest hurdle will be the injection mold required to like make this thing, and it's $77,000 ticket item right there. It's jeez. But if we can crowdfund enough to produce this, that is the path we'll pursue.
Yeah,
you know, like contracts with the government.
For sure.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. And so you've gone from Lucid now to Blip. How did that transition happen?
It transitioned with a website I forgot to mention while we're still plugging, starchamberspa.com.
Star Chamber Spa.
Go check it out.
Well, and if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's crowdfunded, so you can get involved too.
So right now the starchamberspa.com will take you to a page that lets you know a campaign is forthcoming. Like give us your email to let you know you're interested in learning when it's launched. So taking interest now.
We'll link it.
Yeah. So you asked to transition from Lucid to Blip.
Yeah.
So Lucid is not a small company anymore. It's a very, very large company. Yeah. And as it made that transition, many of the people at that time, myself included, were just like, hey, it's not for me anymore. Yeah. I like the smaller stuff.
For sure.
I like the earlier stages are a lot more fun. And once that gets in your blood, like anything else just feels like it's inefficient or just like, but Lucid's done a great job of carrying their momentum and even building on top of their early momentum. It's still a fantastic company to work for. But I just started looking and got a couple of offers, which just once you just make that switch in your mind, it's like, it's hard to turn off. So I was like, it's time for me to leave. Accepted an offer from Facebook, but I never made it there. I had got a call from a business school classmate who's like, hey, I didn't know you're leaving Lucid. Like, I'm offended that you didn't even look at our startup, man. Like, you didn't even ask a question.
You didn't even hit me up.
I'm like, I didn't know you were doing anything. So, and this was Blip. He talked to me a little bit about it, and I flew out to Utah, had one dinner with James, who's a co-founder, someone I respect a ton and love working with. And after that one dinner, like I reneged on Facebook and came to Blip 4 years ago, have not looked back. Well, 3.5 years ago, have not looked back, man. Has been fantastic. And some of the things I saw in James and then later Brent, who's the other co-founder, and in the product and in the opportunity was like, this is truly innovation. Like first movers has not been done before. And maybe it's worth taking 30 seconds and just outlining what Blip is.
Yeah.
It's best explained or best understood when using Uber as a proxy, right? So like Uber is a piece of technology. It's a scheduling algorithm that sits in the middle of a two-sided marketplace between car owners and car riders, right? Uber does not own cars. They do not ride. Blip is exactly the same. We're a scheduling algorithm, but on one side of our market, it's people who own signs, and billboards are the most popular, but we're talking like car toppers or wallscapes or whatever, digital signs. Yeah. And then the other side of the market is people who want to advertise. And so the value prop split up is to the board owners. It's like you don't have to employ another sales effort to go fill this slot on your board and sell it, on a contract basis, you can just give us access through a software integration to your player, give us access to your open slots, and we'll just rifle all this demand from the other side of our market and fill them up for you. And then we'll split the revenue. And the other side of the market, it's like, man, I'm starting out, Star Chamber Spa, right? Like I don't have $1 million to go spend on, and who even owns the board in Times Square? Is there one owner? Is there 50? Like, who do you call to get up there? You know what I mean? And so for them, they just come to a Google Maps like interface on the website. It's like I'm circling the I-15. You'll see little dots represent boards in our ecosystem and associated with their location, and hover over them for some metadata to show you 400,000 people pass the point of the mountain every day. Your best shot is between 4 and 6 p.m. or whatever. And they'll just say this sign, that sign, this sign, this sign in my campaign. I don't want to spend any more than, $1,000 a day or whatever it is. And we'll take those inputs and keep them out of campaign and run it for them. So it's like access to signs that they couldn't have before. Yeah.
Yeah. Your interface is really cool. Do you guys do creative work at Blip or?
We do. Yeah. Cause that's a big hurdle. And for us, it's something we want to solve before it becomes a problem, because people throw the craziest stuff up on a billboard and they think I'm going to drive, I'm going to drive signups and traffic. I'm like, no one's remembering your phone number. No one's taking them. Like there is no call to action that should live on a billboard, really.
It's brand, it's straight brand.
And it's all in cursive, and it's just like the weirdest contrast colors. It's just like, you're going to cause an accident and you're not going to get the return you want. So we do have in-house designers that help them simplify their messaging and help them achieve what they're trying to accomplish. And with that comes a need for a lot of customer education on the part of sales and marketing, because billboards do not work by themselves. They're not a single channel that they're just, that's just not what they're for.
Yeah, you can't just top of funnel. Say, hey, I'm going to throw up 5 billboards and I'm going to just expect this to happen.
Exactly. The thing we like to talk about is we like to just go to where the rubber meets the road, man. There is a website out there called OAAA.org, and it's the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, if I got that correct. Unaffiliated, totally independent, but they have a section right on their homepage. It's it used to be called Proof That OOH Out of Home Works. It may now be called Case Studies or vice versa, but you can drop down that menu and buy, industry. We'll have case studies, and we direct people to that quite a bit. One of my favorites was done by McDonald's. McDonald's had a menu item they were relaunching in 5 cities, and these are like Dallas, Oklahoma City type DMAs. 5 cities, and for all 5 cities, they did a 6-week Facebook campaign leading up to the launch. Mm-hmm. And then 4 of the 5 cities, they coupled billboards with that Facebook campaign.
Oh, cool.
And the 4 cities outperformed the control city by 729% in sales. Wow, that's 729%. And that's the message. It's use billboards to make everything else you're doing more effective. And I am interested, this is going back to that consumer behavior class. Yeah. I'm interested in why does that happen? Why 729%? What is the scientific reason that's happening? And it touches on a little of I mentioned the 3 years of training. 6 months of that was an interrogation school, and then a follow-on learning how to work with people in particular situations. And so I'm really interested in the psychology that we and the stuff that we try and tap into wittingly or unwittingly when we do business, right? Yeah. And so I think the best that I can describe it is when you are sitting on the toilet or whatever you're doing with your phone and an ad is served, you're swiping that away as quickly as you can. Yeah. You're not in shop mode. But when you're driving on the road and you're confronted by a billboard for 8 seconds,
for a spicy chicken sandwich.
Yeah, man. It's all you are forced to psychologically ingest colors, logos, maybe a couple words. So the next time, and you're not going to do anything with that, but the next time it surfaces on your phone, it becomes a psychology of survival. It's the fight or flight instinct we have, fight, flight, or freeze. And it's just yo, Dan, we've seen this logo, colors, and these words before. Do we need to dwell an extra second to determine whether or not it's a threat or a benefit? Yeah. And the answer is automatically yes. That is just human nature. And that's why billboards plus bottom of funnel stuff is so effective,
That reminds me, I don't know if you've seen Mad Men.
Parts because of these conversations.
I was gonna say with the advertising industry that that it's such a good show. Like if you ever want to be inspired by like old school advertising, it's such a good show. But in there, this takes place in the, I think it's like the late 50s all the way through about the 80s is where the show ends. It's like a 20 year timeline. But
prime cigarette marketing.
Yeah, well, yes, and they talk. Well, one of the ad agency's main clients is a cigarette company, but they talk about kind of that time when the government was like cracking down on cigarette advertising and the psychology that went into how they were going to still advertise, even though now this is causing cancer. Yeah, so it's just really fascinating, but obviously horrible stuff, but same with McDonald's. And the same with, I mean, one of my favorite episodes is when the main character breaks down, one of their other clients is Kodak. And
camera, like film?
Yeah, the film camera. But they were releasing the film carousel. I don't know if you remember this. It was a carousel with slide film. Yep. And you could have it at home. Put it into a projector. Yeah, the projector at home, right? And it's like the only episode that would probably make me emotional because I'm also a photographer.
Oh, okay.
That's my background. But they couldn't sell this, basically. They couldn't sell this carousel. They released it to the market. They were having a hard time selling it. And it literally came down to the emotionality of it. Came to the ad agency. They took that carousel and made an incredibly emotional campaign surrounding like family memories at home, all this kind of stuff. And just the psychology behind advertising is so fascinating, but obviously turned around the campaign and made Kodak into a household name at that point.
Well, I think it's all about awareness too, right? Like I might be sitting at home on my couch and see an ad that Chick-fil-A launched a new sauce. And then I think nothing of it and I forget about it. But then I'm driving on the freeway and again, I see Chick-fil-A talking about how they launched a new sauce. And all of a sudden I start to create this sense of FOMO where I'm like, okay, everyone, okay, all the paid social awareness campaigns are telling me that like there's this new sauce. I got to go try this thing. Yeah. So I think that awareness is huge. And the funny thing about our industries is in a way, we fight against each other and work together. So for us, we tell people who don't have a lot of budget, we're always like, oh, don't do billboards because if you don't have a lot of budget, like that's not going to go anywhere. And I'm sure you guys would say the same thing probably. Yeah. But then people with big budgets, we've totally played with that same concept of billboards are there for a reason and they provide a ton of value. So I think that it's OAAA, is that
OAAA.org.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a super cool place for us to use to talk to people about potentially using Blip because I honestly think we're an agency partner with Blip.
We've had some clients use Blip.
Because I think it would be a really unique approach to test that system, especially here locally. Where do your billboards go? How many areas do you work? Is it just Utah or you're all over the country now?
All over the country. Right.
Okay. We've got partners now, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So like Times Square?
Yep. Times Square.
Wow. How cool is that?
Yeah. It's cool. How much, take like, Chase Field in Phoenix, baseball field for the Diamondbacks. How much money, or even Staples Center for whatever it is now, Crypto Arena?
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, how much money are people paying for 8 seconds of their ad to appear on a screen like that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I would ballpark like maybe $100,000 or around something around there probably.
Yeah.
For 8 seconds.
Same range.
8 seconds in one of those arenas when it's full.
Yeah.
Just for one event.
Yep. Just 8 seconds, one blip.
I would say I'd go way lower, actually. I'd probably go with like 5.
Are you saying through Blip or not through Blip? I was thinking not through Blip.
Yeah, not through Blip.
But not through Blip. That'd probably be around 100.
Well, sorry. Let's say through Blip.
Yeah, because I mean, the benefit to Blip is if you don't go through Blip, you have to probably sign some sort of agreement where you show up every game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right? So I would say, hey, if I want to show up for 8 seconds in one of those arenas on the main screen, is that what you're saying?
Hmm.
I don't know, $5,000.
$5,000
through Blip. Yeah, it'd be a totally different service through Blip, but
it's like it's average of like 4 to 6 cents.
Yeah, so much
4 to
cheaper.
6 cents.
Wait, what?
Pennies, 4 to 6 pennies for 8 seconds. Yeah. Times Square, 15 seconds, $20, but that's because the board owner is like, I won't do it for anything cheaper, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, like this has revolutionized, going back to that conversation with James, like revolutionized the 98% of businesses that you're talking to that do not have, and we wouldn't tell them to spend on billboards with you because we don't want them to come back 3 months later and be like, it's not working.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the 98% of people who do not have a budget for out of home or for anything top of funnel, like they now have access to this when they want, where they want, for as much as they want to pay. Now, granted, like you're going to get absolutely nothing but a story from spending 5 cents on 8 seconds, right? We recommend that we start working with a client when they are prepared to spend $5,000 a month for 3 months in conjunction with some pretty strong bottom of funnel stuff, because again, that's what we're trying to benchmark and like your return, your conversion, your traffic growth, stuff like that. And it's usually $5,000 a month ish based on our current prices. It's a bid auction, right? So you pay what other people are willing to pay. Yeah. $5,000 a month for 3 months, and you'll start to see things uptick like that McDonald's.
Yeah. So how do you, I mean, even in digital advertising, the reason I got into digital advertising was because I'm an analytical freak.
Yeah.
And I love to and I love to track everything. Well, ended up not being the case because iOS 14 and cookies and everything that's happening. So now I try and track things. For example, I tried to track a campaign the other day, integrated Shopify's API with Facebook, which should be the direct correlation.
As close as we can get these days.
And it's like, okay, you spent $1,500, you made $16,000. I thought, wow, that's crazy good. I can't believe that their ROAS is so good. I hop into their Shopify and I'm not seeing this crazy lift in their Shopify. So I get very curious about the numbers. I spend 2 hours diving in, don't find an answer. So with Blip, what's attribution? Do you guys dive into attribution a lot? What do you do with customers?
So we are trying to dive into attribution because it's very hard.
It's an endless hole.
It's a hole, right? And also I'll say 2 things on this. The first is, and this is where the need for more customer education comes. It's like you have to divorce yourself from the digital marketing way of thinking where it's transactional, one for one, like I pay, I get, and I can check that every day. It's just not going to happen with out of home. And it shouldn't. Like that's not what you're advertising for on a billboard, right?
Yeah, it's top funnel awareness.
It's awareness. And so the second thing I'll say is like what you should be shooting for is really understand those metrics for your business, like really understand to the degree to which it sounds like you guys do. And then understand that when you layer the billboards on top, what is changing there. And so our white glove service, like our customer success team, is really forthcoming with data and dashboards and communication, like regular communication. We treat our clients as like business partners to help them fine tune the lift they are seeing. And that requires starting out with like identifying or defining the base, baseline, right? So it's hard because especially in an economic downturn like the one that we may be feeling or whatever. I don't know.
Whoever wants to say.
Yeah. The first thing people want to do is like, I got to cut my costs. And then they cut off an entire channel. It's like, that's stupid. Yeah. I agree that you need to cut your costs, your advertising spend, but you need to do so proportionately or you're going to miss on like these exponential effects of efficiency that out of home bring to your digital marketing stuff. So it's hard, man.
Yeah.
Or invest when other people's are cutting.
There you go.
It becomes cheaper.
It becomes cheaper.
And you win more market.
Yeah.
Like it's really the best time to advertise is in a downturn when all of the big brands start pulling budgets, because then everything just becomes easier.
And to be honest, this year, Dan and I said, we're focusing 25% of our time on content, which is why we're doing this podcast. Yeah. We probably said that in every episode now. But the thing that I've noticed is we've had an amazing year and we've grown way faster than we anticipated. We're not spending more. And honestly, my engagement is way down on LinkedIn. But for some reason, I'm getting a lot more meaningful business relationships just because of the consistency. So...
And it can't be. It's like this dark funnel thing that people keep talking about, or dark social. We can't directly attribute our content to inbound. I mean, sometimes we can, but not a lot of the time. Yeah. But we can see as we're starting to do this, that something is changing.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think my whole thought process as an entrepreneur who owns a company is I want to be seen on LinkedIn in the morning by someone. I want them to see our ad that day. I want them to get on ksl.com and see an article of ours on the homepage. I want them to drive into work and see a billboard of us. I want them to come home and see a post from me on my social platform.
Yeah.
And then, 2 months might go by and they're like, man, I see this kid a lot. Like, what are they doing again? I need to reach out. And where do you attribute it? You don't. It's that top of funnel awareness. You've got to have it all.
You're preloading like the answer to a question they're going to have in the future. And if you are top of mind, like it will
eventually
load.
Back.
Yeah. I also think there's some psychological benefit there to ramping up the awareness type stuff in a downturn, because the downturn is a clear signal that the consumers, upon whom we're focusing here, are scared. There's fear. There's conservatism and I don't know. Yeah. But humans assume that everyone else is feeling that same thing. And we drive down the road and we're like, oh, not those guys. They are, okay, that's someone I want to follow. Like that person, what do they know that I do not?
Yeah.
Like, can they lead me to safety type thing? Mm-hmm. And so not something to put all your money into, but something to be aware of. Like, we are playing a psychological game in business all the time.
Okay, so an idea I have is we do a partnership with Blip where
we
just go, we travel to all these unique places and time it and just go and take pictures of ourselves with the scroll.
Let's do it. I'm totally down. Totally down.
Scroll around the country.
Yeah, I like it. That's cool. That's the new tagline.
But that way it gives them insight. It gives insights to people about how these are the places that you could advertise. Yeah. Although I'm sure that that's like the worst customer for you guys, right?
Absolutely.
A person that's like, I just want
just
10 minutes
one
in Times Square. When really you're like, no, what you want is 4 hours on I-15 every day or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, worst customers to build a business around, but best customers for virality and just like, we are not in this only to make money, right? Like, we feel somewhat like Robin Hood and Little John because of Blip and this. Let me just think for a second to make sure this is absolutely true, because I say this a lot. It feels good. Like, because of Blip and only because of Blip, Kizik, for example, can advertise in front of or right behind Nike in the same spot for a fraction of what Nike is paying, right? And so that is like a feel-good thing for us. And while you can't build a business around people who are spending $1,000 a month or $100 a month or whatever it is, like, that is what we're building for, to give opportunities to people who can't. And I'm all about it.
Yeah. Well, you completely shifted my view on billboards, like when you said sense, and I was like, man, all right, well, we're gonna need to change some strategies.
Dan always thinks big, though.
I do think big
in a good way.
Yeah. And I'm not wrong. Like, there are some ad spaces that will cost that. Well, definitely.
And I feel like you're thinking like, oh man, this is an arena Super Bowl. Boom, you run an ad.
Commercials. A couple $1 million for
you think
less
that
than 10 seconds,
You look at behemoths like Amazon, they spend 60% of their ad budget out of home. They know something that we don't, right? Yeah. Like, and for anyone, you guys included, anyone listening to this podcast, like, hit us up directly on LinkedIn or RJ at blipbillboards.com. And we're happy to get people started. We'll match, call it a $5,000 spend. We'll match 1-to-1. So we'll give you $10,000 of advertising space in that first month. We want to become a standard part, like a part of the standard canon of advertising, right? Yeah. Like, this is the opportunity to make your current efforts effective is so great. Like, we just need to do what we can to get people started, right? Like, this is, I mean, for the times that we did go to school, if you took a marketing class, willing to bet you never talked about billboards. Like, that was never part of the curriculum. We've grown up in a generation where that's just like a thing of the past. It's unsexy. Well, it's not anymore. Like, it's back.
It's back. And history repeats itself. We're seeing a big resurgence, like, especially because we work with a lot of home service guys. Big resurgence in mailers and direct to consumer stuff, because
even door hangers,
like, people just pulling, because everybody's pulled back. So if you do something that is stand out,
Yeah.
Like, 100%. It's super good awareness and works, right? And same with billboards. So,
but also consumers are so sick of getting blown up on their phones at home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're so sick of it. So they're used to seeing billboards outside of the house. And honestly, it's a game for a lot of people. Like, for example, Homey is probably the greatest example of billboard usage in Utah. They drove a narrative down everyone's throats. Everyone knew who Homey was. I never saw an ad for them.
That's true.
On my phone in my life.
Yeah, and they're super unique about. I mean, spent a good, from what I understand from rumors, like almost like 80% of their budget on billboards. That was it. Like the rest was to other you know, marketing agents, but it was like 100% billboards in the markets that they were in.
But it's crazy to see that how you can control a narrative locally. Homey was focused on the Utah market originally. They controlled that narrative. Everyone knew who they were, and they're a massive business that does a lot of revenue now, whether or not you like their model. But they kill it. So, or killed it. But there is a huge advantage to billboards that people leave out, right? Try marketing approaches that other people aren't trying. Yeah. Everyone's bidding on Facebook now. How do I know? Because CPMs have gone up so much. Yeah. Same with TikTok. CPMs are already starting to get expensive on TikTok. Yeah. So billboards are freaking awesome if you have the right marketing approach. And that's what's cool about you saying your customers are kind of like business partners. You have that white glove service. You have graphic support. People can actually come in and get a billboard that's going to make an impact compared to like Sue's Flowers.
Yeah.
No dogging on whoever owns Sue's Flowers. I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll buy flowers.
Yeah, the Sues of the world are actually doing something great as well. Like they are consistently on boards within 2 miles of the brick and mortar store, right? Yeah. And that drives a ton of awareness and conversion.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to your career path and in Blip, what was your career path in Blip to get to your COO role that you are in now? How'd that come about?
Been at Blip for almost 4 years, maybe 3.5. And I've been serving as a COO for 9 months, 8 or 9 months. So I started in strategy and operations on the supply side of our market, and I knew less than nothing about what I was doing. And to this day, like I am the biggest imposter out there. I wake up every day. I'm like, I shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? But that's a good thing for a couple reasons, because it means you're being stretched. It means you're developing. It means you're growing. Yeah. And like, it means we are truly, if we are facing problems we've never solved before, that means we're making progress. And like, there is innovation taking place underneath our feet now, you know?
That's a really good mindset.
Yeah. So I started there in the supply side of the business, and luckily, Chad Smith had that side of the business on lockdown. And so he was like my Chat GPT before Chat GPT was a thing. He literally knew everyone in the industry, knows everything about the business. And so we worked together to like fine tune our approach to making money for the sign owners and making sure we had the inventory that the advertisers actually wanted to spend on, right? Because Times Square is way different than rural Iowa. And,
for sure.
You know, one board is not one board. Not all boards are created equally. So I started there, moved to more business operations, general operations for the business. So I started to encompass some of the go-to-market side of the marketplace. And in 2021, the same number of employees, we 3.5x'd our revenue, and I'm talking like on the order of double-digit millions.
Oh my gosh!
Same number of employees at 56.
Wow.
At the time, and what that means is the team got hyper efficient, like super focused, super efficient, and that speaks to the execution thing, right? Execution can't be what it should be if everyone's not executing on the same thing, right? So that creates the need for a driver in the business to say, like, what are we trying to accomplish, for whom and why and how? And as you move away down that waterfall to the how, you're relying increasingly so on people that, you know, are outside of your own brain. Like, this is where it becomes critically important to hire the smartest people you can find. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I salivate in the interviewer seat when I find someone that I just can't even hang with. intellectually, I'm like, you got to come work here. You know what I mean? Because 5 of you are going to be the reason I can step away. You know what I mean? Like be replaced.
Yeah.
And
For
so,
sure. Super cool.
yeah, and that was huge for us in 2021 to just maintain the same number of employees, because this gets into a pet peeve I have of, it's not a pet peeve about scale. It's a pet peeve of like misusing words. Words have meaning. You know what I'm saying? Like words, they mean stuff. And you hear people say, yeah, we scaled from like 50 to 100 people. Like that's not scale.
We just talked about
Yeah,
this.
that is not scale. That's adding people.
That's
you know
adding
what I mean?
people. It's not actually like scaling is literally what you just talked about. It is growing more with the same number of people. That is scaling.
Yeah, growth is not scaling. Growth is growth. You know what I mean? Scaling is a disproportionately increased output compared to your increased input, right? If you can increase your input 1x and then grow your output by 5x, you have scaled. You know what I mean? So it's a ratio, it's a relationship between inputs and outputs, and we've just lost sight of that, you know, as on the whole. But
on the tech side, well, and you see that you get Twitter and lays off 80% of their staff, and they're still working just fine. Like the whole tech sector, social media, it's all bloated. It's super bloated, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens the next 5 years.
Hiring is so annoying.
Another trend I think that plays into that, or plays into what we're going to see unfold, is this solopreneur trend.
Yes,
I think there are going to be a lot of one-person businesses out there who serve contractually like the enterprises we all interact with every day. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love that a lot.
People, it's going to be the power back to the people of like, I don't want a W-2. I'm going to go 1099 and you're going to pay me 15% more or 15% less, and I'm going to have 3 of these, you know?
Yep.
And
absolutely.
I control my time. I control how much I do for you. Like,
that's something, oh my goodness. Like I'm pushing 40 now, about to turn 40, and I feel like I've learned way too late. I look back at my career choices and I'm like, man, if I'm honest, how many of those decisions were made with people's voices in my head, like thinking, this is what is expected of me. This is what success looks like. Like, man, if I can't go back and do it all over again. So I will make sure that my children don't fall victim to this. But like the currency of success is level of control of your own time. You know what I mean? Like all that matters is not the conversation, not the sip circle conversation about like, what do you do and how's it been going? And Kennedy's, man. All that matters is like what my 4 kids will say in the Relief Society room right before the funeral begins and the viewing is ending and like my casket is going to be closed. Are they going to be like, you know what? He did love us. Like despite whatever, like it was good. He was good. Or are they going to be like, uncontrollably sobbing, like there he goes, you know, it's like my spiritual rock, that's my leader, like that mind shift happened for me. That mind shit happened for me. And
it is kind of mind shit.
It is like that mind shift happened for me way too late. Sitting on a hill in Syria, I'm just like, this is literally the only thing that matters. There is nothing else that matters.
That's amazing, man. And now you're taking your family to Ecuador.
Yeah,
dude, we could have
because
an
of that
entire second episode about work-life balance, culture within Blip, and the ability to do this, because
it's Brent and James,
like if
man.
we added it to this episode now, we wouldn't even be able to give it all of the credit it deserves. I would love to do a second episode about that if you're open.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Virtually.
I will sing the Blip praises as loudly and often as I can. Brent and James have created something that is special, that is like, it is so fun to be a part of Blip, and it starts with those 2 guys right there. I'll talk about that all day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, we'd love to do it when you're back in Utah, because you're moving to Ecuador, or virtually, because I think that that's a topic we haven't touched a lot on in this podcast, and the fact that you have just a really cool situation going on right now would be awesome to talk about. Okay. The last thing that we really like to ask everyone though is, where do you feel like marketing is going in the future? And we know that this answer is I have no clue, because marketing is always changing. Yeah. But there are some predictable things. So we'd love to ask you, like, where do you see marketing, since you're in a marketing company, where do you see it going in the next 5-10 years?
one trend. So I'm not a marketer. I need to make that clear. So take this for what it's worth. But any time I step into like an arena where I'm not the expert, the best thing I have, the best tool I have is to look backwards and just make sense of what's been happening and see if I can take maybe 2 or 3 data points to project a line in front of me, right? And so
that was the most operational answer ever. I love that.
Marketing is going to operations.
Yes.
So
I love it.
you think about our parents and their parents, and I define marketing very simply as creating demand. Like it's just creating demand for whatever.
So it should be, at least, yeah.
Yeah, it's what it should be, right? And so back in the 80s and 90s, demand was created from a catalog that JCPenney's like put on your dinner table, right? It's like, I'm gonna buy the best dang washer and dryer money can buy for this family, And because of that stamp of validation, like demand was being created. And that's where everyone knew to go. And we've seen a shift in that as devices have made information so accessible. Like people don't want to hear JCPenney tell you that JCPenney has the best washers and dryers. People want to buy from people. They want to buy from their friends. They want to see it socially validated. And I think that we're seeing that trend on LinkedIn, right? If I were to talk about Blip all day on LinkedIn, we'd have $0 in the pipe coming from LinkedIn. But we have a lot of dollars in the pipe coming from LinkedIn. And I've never said a word about Blip on LinkedIn, right? Yeah. And neither does anyone in LinkedIn. It's because I think the trend is going to even grow in the future where people want to buy from people with whom they have an emotional connection. Like, totally. I know that guy. I love what he stands for. Like, I've seen her operate under stress. She is just fantastic. Like, personal is going to win the day in terms of creating demand. And I think that is one of the places it's going based on what we've seen in the past, like the shift that's been taking place.
I love that. I think, we've seen this shift the last, the creator economy, right? The last 10 years, I think, with the rise of influencer marketing in the D2C space. And now the last couple of years, we've really, and I think it'll explode in the next couple of years, this influencer marketing in B2B. And I mean, it's always been a thing. Here's the thing. It's always been a thing. We've always bought emotionally from people that we like, but it's never come to the forefront. It's always, nobody's really talked about it, but we've always bought from people that we like, of course, but
that's a great point.
It's now just becoming more apparent.
Yeah. We want to buy from, we want to buy from people. And I think a second thing that we'll see, or maybe not see, but a second thing that will benefit those who adopt it earlier is leveraged audiences will do so much in the future for creating demand for your product, right? So whether it be influencers or affiliates or otherwise, leveraged audiences are going to be huge for demand creation opportunity.
Love that. It's awesome. Well, RJ, I really appreciate the conversation today. Super cool story. We're going to talk more. I have no doubt about it. It's really cool just to hear your career path and your story of kind of going from the government into entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship and kind of where you are today. It's really, really appreciate the conversation today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And also Blip is just such a cool product. The fact that it's changing the way people can do billboards. I mean, just talking to you, you've got a customer in us. I've already been thinking about how do we create our new local strategy and get billboards on I-15.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
So
for us and for a lot of our local clients, we're trying to build a bigger presence here in Utah locally. 80-90% of our clients are outside of Utah.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Our client base is
how do you guys what are your acquisition channels that have been the most successful for the
paid
social, LinkedIn, organic,
That's cool, man. 90%
partners. Utah. We work with a couple large white label partners, and partners have been probably our second biggest acquisition channel.
We have plans to become a white label partner to agencies. In fact, I only walked in 10 minutes early because I was in the parking lot answering an email from an agency owner that's like, it's time, let's do it. They handle all the advertising for a franchise, a big franchise. And it's like, man, if we could partner with them and make it easier for you guys to have all of your thousands of franchisees marketing effectively, I mean, it's good for you and it's good for us.
Oh, we're going to talk then.
We're
definitely going to talk.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you again, RJ.
And thank you guys.
Where do people find you?
www.reshaping, Do they say that anymore? blipbillboards.com. It would be blip.com, but Disney owns blip.com domain.
Interesting.
What are they trying to do?
I know they bought it for a video company 10 years ago, shut it down, and it's just on a shelf. So if anyone can, there's a bounty out for blip.com.
Yeah, we're joint Scroll, but
Twitter
owns
Scroll.
What about you personally?
starchamberspa.com and also just RJ on LinkedIn. If you just type in RJ and Blip, there will be no other.
There won't be another one. Yeah, that's like me.
There's
Only
only one
how do I
RJ.
type in
Hickenlooper.
Other than the governor of Colorado.
Yeah. But I don't.
Former governor.
You'll know which one's which.
I love it. Thanks again, RJ. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much.